I think we can go. Yeah, you can just read the sentence, then we start.
Okay. Hi, I'm Keith Teare. You're listening to Gut Talks, Guttalks, Gut Talks.
Okay, that's creative. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think we're live for this one, but it's gonna be edited. Keith, that's the second time you come. Last time was 2 years ago, and I actually checked the exact date. That's when I emailed you and said, okay, uh, you said back then you will come to continue because in the previous episode, um, you shared about your journey and how you that's still like stuck with me. You sold your company, and then after it was valued at like much more, uh, and you moved to the US and everything. So, for people who don't know Keith and who are live right now on LinkedIn and YouTube, I think you're an English American technology entrepreneur with a background in sociology and British government and politics.
Correct.
And yeah, and you founded and co-founded several IT companies since the early 80s, and you were a founding shareholder of TechCrunch. And you're currently the founder and CEO of SignalRank Corporation, a systematic investment platform that uses data intelligence to access top tier startups at Series B. And this is changing venture investing one data point at a time. So I think maybe we start with this one, but just to mention, you're also a content creator. You have a great newsletter. You have a Telegram channel. You're on Substack, and your newsletter is also on LinkedIn. And I encourage everyone who wants to stay informed about what's going on to at least read your newsletter or read all the 1,000 links you read on a weekly basis. Um,
Exactly. It's thatwastheweek.com. And on Telegram, it's just at that was the week.
yeah, that was the week, and I like the intros you have, and I'm gonna be posting all the links. Quick one here. What got you? Because a few years ago, you started talking about the creator economy. Is this when you got started, and what keeps you going?
You mean doing the newsletter?
Yeah, and the podcast with Andrews.
The thing that keeps me going is curiosity in understanding developments in is mainly in three areas. Broadly speaking, tech, more narrowly venture capital, and also government and regulation um, as it pertains to how do you spread the wealth that tech creates. So there's a bunch of different reasons, but it's curiosity and a desire to be current. There's nothing worse than somebody who quotes from an Old Testament and never engages with what's going on today.
Yeah, true. And um, and just to say, like, I loved how last time it was, you shared why you got started and how you got into technology. And but then your background is not at all in technology. It's you're a techie, not to say a geek in a way. You learned all that on your own, and when AI came out, you were, I mean, generative AI. You started coding, and you in one of your newsletters, and podcasts, you shared a platform for people to test out, and that's based on your own workflow, right? So, what else have you built since we spoke?
You know a lot. I built a lot. If you go to search.signalrank.ai, it's a search engine that sits on top of both investors and companies in the venture capital ecosystem. I built all of that. Actually built it in, I'm going to guess, 3 or 4 days um, in total, and it's been live ever since. I built the entire CRM and workflow system for SignalRank's back office. It's about 8 different modules, but we use it because it's custom designed for our workflows. So way better than using Salesforce or HubSpot or any of those things. Um, uh, on a more personal note, I built I haven't released it yet in the App Store, and I might not, but I built a therapy app for teens. I have three young boys, and the youngest had a lot of challenges, medical challenges, and I built an app called Reflect, which was for him to have private conversations with AI about him, um, and was, you know, custom designed to be helpful and thoughtful without being sycophantic. Um, so lots of things. I mean, you can. The amazing thing is you can build anything that comes into your mind, and quickly as well. And you can build, you know, an Android app or an iPhone app or a web app or a Mac app. I mean, anything, because the AIs are good enough to understand. So the only requirement of you is being able to articulate what you want clearly enough. And I think you can pretty much do it in any language, by the way. So you don't have to do it in English. We're entering the era of custom software, where it would always be a worse choice to pay a vendor for some generic software. Now, of course, it's like anything. You have to be prepared to put the effort in to do it, and many people don't want to do that, so they will go and buy from a vendor. But you no longer have to.
Yeah, yesterday I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's a designer, and I'm a designer, and I was telling her to use these vibe coding platforms because she wants to build a website. She's more into print than digital, but I'm like, you don't need to go elsewhere. At least you're in control, you know? And I was showing her, and this is like literally anyone can do it with a bit of patience. And based on what you're saying, I remember you talking about this therapy app that you built. I remember on one of your shows, and a few weeks ago, I didn't want to use the vibe coding um, apps out there, you know, Lovable and Copos
Yeah,
and whatever. I'm like, no, I want to try to do something myself. So I used Claude, and I got inspired by the CEO of Scale AI, who was
yeah,
saying anyone can build an app, just take that takes pictures of your feet and just gives you something. So I built something similar, and it took me like 2 hours to do it,
yeah,
and I got a PayPal button, and I was proud of myself. Yeah, I mean, I don't know
yeah,
who, but I might release it just to see how it happens, and I put it on TikTok and see what happens, right?
yeah.
So I think that's the spirit. But I was proud of myself because I had no idea what I was doing,
Right.
obviously, like tech wise, but it worked.
It worked, and the tools have evolved a lot since you and I last spoke.
Yeah.
I think I was probably using Cursor and Claude together when we last spoke.
ChatGPT, I think.
Oh, was it ChatGPT?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, then after that, I started using Cursor and Claude. Then I replaced Claude inside Cursor with GPT-5, and I now use Cortex, which is um, ChatGPT's terminal-based coding engine. It's really super good. And I taught a friend actually in England who's an analyst who does data analytics, and he was wanting to crawl a whole bunch of EU feedback on some European Commission proposal. And I helped him build a thing that crawled every document, then classified it as for or against this proposal, and did some statistics, and also discovered secret vote rigging campaigns where lots of NGOs were submitting the same content that obviously had been distributed between them. Um, all kinds of stuff, and he wrote that code. So it's amazing. The tools are evolving. They're getting better. They don't make as many mistakes, and they don't ask you for your input as often. So you can ask for something, and 10 minutes later, it needs you again, and it's done a lot of things in between. So it's really getting better and better.
So what's your take on, I think 2 years ago or so, Sam Altman was saying we're gonna have like a one-person billion-dollar company. What's your take on this now? I think he said it 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, it can happen, but only for specific kinds of ideas. where you don't need infrastructure beyond yourself. And so there are especially consumer ideas where that could work, and it probably is going to happen, but I don't think it's going to become normal. I think single rank is as small as I can imagine. We're 5 people. There's 4 discrete job types. One is doing investments. One is doing the data and the AI. The 2 of us work in that area. Me and Yima. And then there's back office, accounts, legal, and so on. And then there's fundraising. So any relatively sophisticated set of goals where there's multiple owners required, each one of those owners can use AI to turn themselves. I even think you turn yourself into 100x of what you would be without AI. I mean, you become a superhuman in a way. It isn't that AI becomes super intelligent, you become a superhuman using it.
Question, you said someone doing fundraising and so on. Like, would you eventually have agents doing that?
I don't think so, because
Agents talking to other agents, to give you the.
that can happen if investors have their own agents. Today they don't. Investors are probably the least using AI. I think venture capital is the lowest use of AI of any reasonably large business, because they all think of themselves as superstar humans, and kind of exaggerate their own importance. And so you have to speak to them one-on-one.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, they're not gonna get rid of themselves. But actually, this takes me back to what you said when we spoke. So I remember you said your wife probably still says, I guess, that you're the most optimistic person she's ever met. But you also told me that you grew up expecting negative outcomes every week. And you kind of escaped by seeing opportunities other missed and seeing patterns. So now signal rank, correct me if I'm wrong here, like removes human judgment. Is that pessimistic?
I would say it scores human judgment.
Okay.
So there are humans making decisions, called venture capitalists, especially early stage venture capitalists who are investing in companies that haven't really produced any evidence yet that they're going to be successful. And they're using their judgment to select from that group. And we score how good they are based on what happens in the next 5 years after they make that investment, or sometimes the next 3 years. And so for signal rank, we're removing the human judgment of our investments, but we're scoring human judgment that's better than ours, and making investments that human judgment suggests.
How did you, was that your thesis when you started, or that evolved?
No. The thesis, and this is still true. There wasn't a thesis, there was anger. And the
Okay.
anger was, as more and more money came into venture capital, and I'm going back now 15 years. I remember Facebook getting a big investment from Yuri Milner, that was valuing Facebook at a crazy high number. And that was the beginning of growth investing. As that money comes in, the real venture capitalists, the people who do seed and pre-seed funding and have these human capabilities, were being squeezed out of ownership in their companies because they couldn't afford to maintain their shareholding by putting more money in as this new big money came in. So they were getting, it's called dilution. Their percentage ownership was being shrunk every time new money came in. and unicorns were being born that these early stage people discovered, but they weren't getting the reward they should get for having done that early hard work. And so it was anger that led me to want to give them money to put into those companies later. In my case, it's at the B round stage, which is typically the third or maybe even the fourth time the company raises money. Usually by then, these smaller funds can't participate. So I wanted to correct this imbalance by raising money to give them to be able to maintain. And the scoring came about because investors didn't believe I would do a good job. They thought that I was too kind and would give money to bad companies, not only to good companies. And that led me to use my data skills to build a scoring engine that would differentiate based on percentiles. So, at the B round, we can say this is the top 5% this year, this is the top 10%, this is the bottom. And that allowed us to have a thesis, which is we'll invest in these early stage fund managers in the top 5% of B rounds, which is what we do. And that also are the companies they should invest in because they're going to do the best by investing in those companies for themselves. So there's a kind of a win-win by doing that. And if they are emotional and want to give money to their worst companies, they can, but we won't underwrite that. And they have to go elsewhere for that money. So it led to it through investor pushback, actually. And it's now extremely systematic, but the goal remains the same. The goal is to channel funds from investors to early stage fund managers into their best companies. And at scale, that should be a lot of money. It should, logically, investors should want to give me a lot of money because that targeting results in very, very high returns.
And last time you shared that your numbers actually prove it, and you're
Yeah.
having more success. Where are we right
Well,
now because of more data?
yeah, rolling the clock forward to today, actually, we sent an investor notification yesterday. We now have done 41 Series B rounds in 2 years. It's a little bit over 2 years. We started in June 23. Um, uh, Only one venture capitalist in the world has done more than 41 B rounds in that time. That's Andreessen Horowitz. So we're number 2 in the world. And the performance is we break it down into years. So in 2023, we did 9 investments. It's currently sitting at 135% of the cost in less than 2 years holding period. The 24 investments, which are less than a year holding period in some of those cases, is at 125% already. And the 2025 cohort, which is 19 companies currently, it'll end up around 25 to 30 by the end of the year, is already also at 135%. And the holding period is less than 6 months in many of those cases. So these companies that we select and invest in are high growth companies. Now, we're investing at the B round, and the life of these companies is probably 10 years of growth ahead of them. Unlike, say, buying Stripe or SpaceX today, which are already fully grown. So the names that we invested in would be unfamiliar to most retail investors. Like, for example, Mercor is one of our companies. They just announced $10 billion valuation, but probably most normal investors have never heard of Mercor.
Yeah, I'm not an investor, but I saw it on your website because I've been reading about it, and I was like,
Right.
wow, when I saw it today on the website. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're in the names that 2 or 3 years from now they'll be household names. but we're in them early. So the whole pitch to our investors is you can select the best early. Well, then, the next bit is we've now completely confirmed our 2026 plans to be listed as a public index. So our competition, in a way, are these public market indexes like the FTSE 100, the S&P 500, which most investors invest in through their managers that manage their money, and they're de-risked, giving everyone quotes that the S&P 500 on average will do 10% growth every year. Well, because we're in early stage private companies, our index back tests at 6.5 times growth in 5 years. That's 650%, not 10% a year. And that's because it's early stage private growth. So by the end of next year, retail investors, anyone, will be able to buy a Signal Rank Index share and will, through doing that, own all of the companies that we have in the index.
Wow, that's news.
Yeah.
Since that's great. And you're staying at Series B.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
Series B is when these early stage investors don't have capital,
yeah.
and need capital in order to maintain positions in high growth companies. By Series B, about 70% of venture-backed companies have already failed. So it's a highly de-risked stage. And 1 in 10 at Series B will become unicorns in general. In the case of our selections, it's more like 1 in 3. So it's de-risked anyway, and we de-risk it further.
Okay. But you said that the actual investment will be in Series B, but you actually go through all stages, right?
No, we only invest at Series B.
No, in terms of investment, yes.
Yeah. Oh, we score
But
every
you
stage.
but scoring, yeah,
Yeah,
it's everything.
we
You
score
still,
every stage. By the
yeah.
time a B round happens, the company has a score derived from 3 or 4 rounds of financing. So that's its score history is what allows us to determine if it's in the top 5%.
Yeah. I have a question. Why don't we, or me, you tell me if I'm wrong, but AZ16 and whatever, we read about them all the time. And before it was Tiger, I haven't heard anything about them ever since. But Signal Rank, is it like a choice not to be out there? Or you're very specific on where you want to be?
Um, well, we're not a fund, so in a way, we not we shouldn't really be spoken of in the same sentence as A16Z. We're a slightly different way of thinking about venture capital. Just like Revolut is to banking, we are to venture capital. We're a kind of a disruptor. Venture capital has never had retail investor money. We're going to change that. And so it's a very different way of thinking about who are the investors that the money will come from. In the case of A16Z, it's a very small number of friendly pension funds and endowments and high net worth individuals. So it's a self-selected, group. Normal people do benefit from that because they're pensioners and their money may be in those pension funds. So there is some benefit to normal people. In our case, it's going to be direct through public market investing. Then the second thing is we're not building a portfolio. A venture fund is making choices and building a portfolio from choice, and so it's relying on its own judgment. We're relying on scoring the judgment of others, and getting allocations to invest in the best of that. So we don't sit around every day discussing what a company does compared to its rivals. We don't even meet the company. So we're a purely statistical AI statistical engine, and we manage the scoring mechanism, and then we manage over 300 partnerships with early stage investors who have access to invest in those companies.
Yeah, I just you're a people's person in a way. So was it difficult for you to just do that and be like, I'm not just gonna be nice, I'm gonna be right in a way?
Right, right. Well, I am too nice in general. It's one of my greatest failings. But in business, you got to be pretty scientific about all your decisions. And I will say there's a gray area for me where I'm not always.
Okay. So I wanna touch a bit on what you've been discussing also, not only when we spoke, but in your newsletter, and that was the week. Um, you've been talking about uh, browsers becoming agents, uh, Chrome AI mode, and so on.
Yeah.
And this whole shift where the interface becomes a conversation
Hmm.
rather than links. So, what actually dies here? Because you mentioned that publishers are the victims, not the users.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so let's stand back a little bit and see the big picture. The internet has a business model. The whole internet has a business model. It's made up of subscriptions to various services, um, uh, or payments, vendors to enterprises. But the biggest part of the internet business model um, is monetized links. Sometimes you can call that advertising, and sometimes it is advertising, but other times it's just clicking on a link that the site you're going to will be paying the site you came from
Okay, like
for the,
affiliates. Yeah.
yeah, affiliates, or just there's three acronyms: CPC, CPA, and CPM. CPM is cost per thousand clicks. CPA is cost per action if you buy something, um, or subscribe to something, and then uh, uh, CPC is uh, more like affiliate payments. So that's the entire internet business model, and it generates something like $700 billion a year. And it depends on search and clicks. Well, if the browser evolves to a place where it's a conversation and you're no longer doing as many searches, there is a danger that that entire business model is buried. It just becomes invisible to users. And if that happens, websites will start getting traffic decline. And there's lots of evidence now that an AI user will click and go to a site many hundreds of times less often than a search user, because search, your intent is to find something to click on. In AI, your intent is to learn something or to understand something. Or so many people are calling AI the death of the web. Not the death of the internet, because AI is on the internet, but the death of the web. And the web meaning websites with traffic, getting subscribers or earning money from advertising due to that traffic coming. And that is not an unrealistic fear. It's entirely possible that would be the trend. Obviously, like everything else, TV didn't kill radio, and AI won't kill the web, but it might shrink it enormously. And therefore the business model will shrink, and therefore the New York Times won't be able to pay journalists to produce content at the same scale as today. So most of what I've been speaking about is how could you fix that? How could the mutual interdependence of publishers and users survive the shift to AI and conversational browsers? And this probably is the wrong place to go into detail, but I came up with an answer to the question: how could you migrate Google's link base, the database of links, and the knowledge of how much money a link is worth, which is in Google's ecosystem? How could you migrate that knowledge to AI and allow it to survive?
And that, just to throw one in here, we're talking more about the interface at this moment is visual primarily, but then what happens when it's not visual also?
You mean spoken?
Yeah.
Um, I I'd expect that to be a trend, but I think there are social reasons why voice won't replace visual at the scale people assume. And that's because the only time you can really use voice is when you're in private. It's very hard to use voice in a group, at least for now. That could change, and you could have group conversations with AI participating, and there'll be use cases for that. But I think there'll still be visual use cases where you want to ask an AI. For example, I just bought a projector that can make a TV picture on my wall. Uh, it's called an ultra short throw projector. So it sits very close to the wall and it makes a big screen on the wall. And there's a lot of competition for which projector. And I used AI to research it, but I didn't get back where I could buy it. Why? Because AI doesn't have current links or prices. Why? Because AI is very good at very bad at database queries. It's a probabilistic, conversation, not one that uses database lookups to give real-time price knowledge, whereas Google does. So I ended up going to Google to find out where to buy it, and that seems to be fixable. OpenAI just announced a deal with Walmart, where Walmart's catalog is going to be available inside. But that's what I would call a bilateral relationship. What you really need is a piece of infrastructure sitting in between all of the publishers and all of the AIs that is the truth about links and the monetization side of links with real-time pricing and stuff like that. That's an opportunity to be built, and then allow AI to query it.
Would Gemini not have um,
An advantage.
yeah.
They would if they had consumer users. But Gemini, unlike Google Search, is mainly business users, developers and businesses. So OpenAI is close to 90% of all consumer AI use is OpenAI. Even Anthropic is mainly business users. So I think OpenAI is the Google of this era, and it wouldn't make sense for them to go and do hundreds of Walmart-style deals. It's a complete distraction. So they should outsource that to a trusted third party.
So going back to advertising, just to touch on this, I'm sure you read where, there were articles where there was stating that OpenAI or ChatGPT is actually exploring having ads in the platform.
Yeah.
And you said that OpenAI also, that's just another one, has the whole consumer um, market. Do you also see, where do you see the Chinese LLMs in that?
Well, the Chinese LLMs are making massive inroads. Cursor just uh, made its own LLM, the primary LLM inside Cursor, and it is a Cursor version of Qwen, the Chinese model, and it's an open source model that they have fine-tuned to their own use case. And so did Box. Box just internally they use Qwen as the main LLM. And so because and on the consumer side, DeepSeek, Kimi, Kimi, and Minimax, which is a new one, Minimax 2, are all fantastic consumer ones, but they don't have, they don't have consumer attention at the scale of an OpenAI. So the real Chinese threat is the open source models being used because they're good, and they're open source, so you have no dependency on the Chinese company that made it. You can run it on your own systems. So I think that's happening. None of that really threatens OpenAI. I think OpenAI has understood that AI is first and foremost a consumer growth story. Now, ads in OpenAI conjures up to me a horror story. And by ads, I mean display advertising. Like you're in a conversation and something flashes above trying to get you to click on it. That would be terrible. And I think Sam Altman thinks that as well. But there's a huge difference between ads and links. A link can be an ad, but it needs to be relevant to the conversation. And OpenAI could get paid if you clicked on the link, just like on an ad, but it wouldn't be intrusive or trying to shoehorn a business model into a user interface that was not designed for that business model. And so I think links are the secret to revenue, not ads. But
Yeah, but you would have more links.
you would have more links, but only as relevant. If you're talking about politics and what happened with the government shutdown in America today, it's not unreasonable that OpenAI would serve you up 5 links from prominent sources, and you choose which one to go and click on, and would be helpful, because otherwise you're limited to OpenAI's training, which will be dated. Perplexity does a good job of this. Perplexity actually is the closest to a good solution of combining links with AI.
Yeah, I've actually ditched Google since I think April 23.
Yeah,
I went all in for Perplexity.
yeah.
But I mean, use my critical judgment because sometimes, obviously. Yeah, do you use like Comet and so on, just which is Perplexity?
I'm using all of them. I'm using DIA, DIA.
Ah,
I'm
yes, you
u-
also mentioned it, yeah.
I'm using Comet, and I'm also using uh, Atlas, ChatGPT's Atlas. In fact, currently Atlas is my main browser on my Mac, um, just because I'm testing it a lot. It is frustrating for search experiences. So Atlas doesn't have a concept of a search. Everything is a chat GPT request. And there are many times in a browser where you actually want to search. And so Perplexity is definitely closer to having figured out the integration there.
Yeah, with ChatGPT, other than like deep search, I never use search or their extension or Atlas. I haven't even attempted, because when I first tried, the search, I just didn't like the fact that it would add them to my conversations, and then I would manually go, little things like that. But
Yeah, yeah.
that
No, they're
you,
irritating. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
If you're the product manager at ChatGPT, these are the things you should really care about.
yeah, yeah. It makes a difference
Yeah,
because you're turning away users actually
yeah,
to
yeah.
something else. Uh, but
So the big opportunity, and this is a trillions of dollars opportunity, is to figure out how the universe of links and publishers lives in the world of AI to serve users. And if you can figure that out, AI will win, users will win, and publishers will win.
And since we're talking about features, just on that, I would like to have like the dates also of parts of my conversations, because I am, it's not that I move from one to another, but I come back to them. And
Yeah,
sometimes I'd like to know when I actually did something. And this is,
yeah.
things like that make a difference. But
Well,
no problem.
so if you're prepared to pay $200 a month to ChatGPT, you get
Oh, you
this
get
feature
that.
called Pulse.
Okay.
And Pulse is based off of a memory that is your entire relationship since day one with ChatGPT. And it proactively serves you up things uh, that are important in the last 24 hours for what it is that you care about. And it has access to memory, so you can ask it questions like that for dates.
Is it worth it for like the because I know you're a
Um,
gadget man also, like you got the Apple Vision Pro. I don't know if you use it as well. So
I just sold it.
you found a buyer.
I got $2,000 for it. So I had it for 3 years. So that's roughly $500 a year I paid to have it.
Okay.
So it cost 3,500 and I sold it for 2,000. Yeah, there are buyers out there because it's an amazing, it's absolutely amazing. It's just finding the use case.
Yeah. And yeah, what were we saying? Yeah, no, I was asking you if ChatGPT Operator, I think it's called, if it's actually worth it.
I haven't used it because I
Okay.
think it doesn't automate anything I care about automating.
Okay.
But Pulse, I use every day. For example, in the signal rank world, we are looking at all the steps required to be a publicly listed index by the end of next year. And it was able to find every single incident of other companies listing where the company was, not exactly doing what we do, but uh, similarly structured to us. And I was learning every single day new elements, and it was able to guide me on the questions to ask my lawyers. It probably saved me $20,000 by preparing me for what my conversation with my lawyers needed to be, because I was already aware of things. I just needed them to validate a way of thinking, not invent it. So it saved me a ton of money.
Yeah. I mean, that's the goal, right? So
Yeah.
Um, I have a quick one here. I work with companies, in kind of transformation using design, and everyone's being told to like adopt AI, um, but it feels shallow in a way when you're talking about the interface in a way because everything's evolving so rapidly, obviously. And for me, it's more of a mindset shift, a behavior change, risk taking. I just love your take on that. Like, what should they actually be doing and thinking about?
Well, I think you always start with what does the company do
Mm-hmm.
today? Um, you know, uh, Back in the 1980s, I built a system for Warner Brothers Music, uh, which is the system called the A&R system, where they recruit new acts. They have to make an entry in the database, and they give them some money to that act, and then the performer spends that money on stuff from Warner Brothers mainly, and they end up with an account. And in order to build that system, I had to interview everyone who worked at different parts of the A&R department to understand their job. And then the software had to, when they saw it on the first day, had to be familiar to them from the point of view of their job. And it's tedious, detailed work, but it's important. So the first question about AI is to understand where AI can help a current company in what it already does. And help is defined as two things: time and money. So could it make them more productive by doing things faster without undermining quality? In fact, maybe even enhancing quality. And could it either make them money if this was a customer-facing thing, or could it save them money if it's a cost of doing business that could be made more efficient? And that's an analysis. You have to go into that pretty deeply. AI is super good at understanding document bases. It's really bad at doing database queries or financial spreadsheet based or accounting based analysis. Anything deterministic, it's really bad at. Anything probabilistic that requires access to knowledge, it's really good at. And so you start, and now you can do deterministic things, but then you have to build a lot of software to overcome the limits of AI. So your agents, for example, has to be trained on forming database queries, retrieving results, interpreting results, which is not what AI is historically good at yet. So the devil's in the detail, but I think time and money are the two big words at the top. And looking at all the processes, internal, outward facing, and figuring out prioritization of where the biggest impact could be.
Yeah, cool. No, I like that. My issue sometimes is some companies want to start just stay at the superficial level because they're also scared. One, there's a learning curve, mindset shift, and so on. That's like number one. Number two is the fear because of their own customers as well, and this can depend on the regions, I guess too, and culture, because it's just like you said once in one of the talks, I think you were speaking in Europe, if I'm not mistaken, and you said talking about investing in Europe, they don't reward risk and they don't reward experimentation. And
Yeah,
I don't know if you can hear the church bells now.
I can. Yeah,
You can, okay.
it's always nice to hear Italian church bells.
Yeah.
Therapeutic.
Yes, no, they're nice. It's, a few times a day though. Sometimes it's too much, but they're nice
I,
in
I,
general.
one, I once went to Lebanon, and the mosque does the evening prayers just after it gets dark, and it's also very therapeutic because they're
And sometimes
singing.
they're together, right, with the
Yeah,
church bells and
sometimes together.
the
Yeah, and
ukulele. Yeah,
especially in Beirut because it's multi
yeah.
religions all at the same time.
Yeah,
But I think
hopefully, I'm
they
going in
figured out how
December.
to share the clock.
Maybe, maybe. I'll let you know in December if I manage to go. But yeah.
Okay.
Um, so because you've been, I think, to Beirut, right, to one of
Yeah.
the conferences,
Yeah,
right?
I did. Yeah.
They did one recently on AI, I think last week.
Oh,
With the yeah, I was like, oh,
well,
this is
Beirut's
something.
really not a great place anymore. The bank
No,
collapsed, currency collapsed. A lot of
yeah,
my friends, got into quite deep personal trouble during that time. And then, of course, the whole Hezbollah stuff hasn't helped. So Lebanon is not in good shape right now.
no, no, it's been like that. But now it's like it's either gonna do well or go like
Yeah,
backwards like 100 times. So
yeah,
let's see. I haven't been there for like 2 years,
yeah.
but this is yeah. Let's see. Um, one for you here. So you started as a political activist, fighting for decentralization, right, and for breaking up power.
Not really
Not for that.
decentralization. More,
Okay.
more. Um, I was issue specific. I ran a group called Workers Against Racism
Mm-hmm.
that was focused on UK specific treatment of immigrants,
Mm-hmm.
and not just immigrants, second generation immigrants who were British,
Mm.
but having bad experiences due to their skin color.
Mm-hmm.
And also the issue of Northern Ireland. I supported a reunification of Ireland.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, you told me.
Um, and then more broadly, from a working class background, my father and grandfather were both coal miners. So I had a broadly, I was broadly in favor of a future in which ordinary people could have a good standard of living.
Yeah. I think if anyone wants to listen to the story, it's to go back to the previous episode, because I didn't know all that, when
Yeah,
we were on the show. So, and your journey is just fascinating. So, but now we're with AI, right? We have lots of open source models and so on, but it's not just about that. It's about everything seems to be concentrated in a handful of companies that
yeah,
are in control. Does this bother you, or this is the necessary path until we figure out
yeah.
what's going to happen?
Well, look, I think it's inevitable that that's the case because money follows innovation, and innovation starts with usually a single company, and then if possible, other companies join in, and it becomes several companies. So the money gets concentrated. If I tell you that something like 75% of all money invested last year went to uh, a very small number of companies, um, and something like 40% of all venture funds went to only 10 funds. You've got huge concentration both within funds and in companies. And so if you look at the charts of how much money is raised, the top 5% of companies are raising much bigger check sizes than everybody else, much, much bigger. And so it appears as if there's a venture capital renaissance with money flowing in the streets. But the truth is, for most companies, they can't get funded because they're not in that top 5%. And so there is this highly concentrated flow of capital. And that is leading to these huge budgets for data centers and the like, and energy sources, and probably will lead to huge outcomes. I think it seems obvious to me that OpenAI is going to be worth trillions of dollars in the future. Nvidia is the world's most valuable company right now at 4 trillion. It wouldn't shock me that OpenAI is worth more than Nvidia eventually. In fact, yesterday SoftBank announced they'd sold all their Nvidia shares so they could invest more in OpenAI. So
But they're connected anyway.
they're connected because the money that gets in OpenAI, some of that money is spent with Nvidia,
Hmm.
and the money Nvidia gets, some
But
of
you
it
have
is
Oracle.
invested in OpenAI. But the money's coming in from the outside. This is why the theory that there's a cyclical, recycling of money just between a small number of companies is not true. This money is coming in from investors on one side and from customers paying for the services on the other side. So there's a huge amount of money flowing into AI. That's what mostly makes it different from the bubble, the internet bubble, when companies were valued without having lots of revenue. Today they have lots of revenue, huge revenues, unprecedented revenues. Like Mercor went from zero to $500 billion of annual revenue in 17 months. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
huge.
yeah.
So there's that's real. And that leads to concentration. The concentration is what is, allowing AI to evolve. And AI evolving benefits all of us through time and money. Going back to time and money, we all benefit if you can shrink time and grow money. And now the question becomes a political question. How does that capital flow from highly concentrated companies into the whole economy for everyone? And I think that's the question of the age. Um, if governments have a role, it's to answer that question.
When we met a few years ago, you were saying that, I think we're doing a short video. I can't remember, but you were saying that because of the internet and the mobile phone, obviously, now everyone can become an entrepreneur and start a business and do things basically they couldn't do before. But do you still think the same with AI?
I think AI accelerates that. I mean, if I think of myself 2 years ago versus today, what is it I can achieve? Um, it's not even close. AI has given me the ability every day to achieve many, many more times output than ever. And you know, I think of it almost like the 100x human. The human is now 100 times more capable than they were before. Of course, for that to be true, you have to actually go and learn the tools and use them. And probably a lot of people are still not doing that. But trust me, if you lean in and you go through the pain barrier of learning these things, suddenly what you can achieve is amplified many, many times, more than with a cell phone and more than with the internet.
That's if you have access to, because now,
Yes,
yes, the internet. Some people in some parts of the world won't have access or don't have access to what we have access to at the moment, or it will be delayed.
I think
That's
that's rapidly changing. You know, the truth is, if you have an Android phone, you've pretty much got everything you need.
okay.
And an Android phone is now very common in most parts of Africa, even. So an Android phone, you know, running a model, either in the cloud or locally, gives you most of what you need. Think of a kid doing their homework and taking pictures of the questions and asking for a way of thinking about how to get an answer, not cheating, but using AI to learn how to think about the question.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. Yeah, yeah, it's something we quickly touched on last time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, no, I wanted your take on that. But
I,
before we
I,
get,
I actually think that the native intelligence of every individual,
yeah,
the disadvantage they have due to their demographic
yeah,
is shrinking.
okay.
Eventually, every individual will have the same chance
Mm-hmm.
to fulfill their potential.
And is the cost of AI gonna go down?
It'll be
At
zero.
what?
Cost will be
Okay.
zero. It already is zero if you have an Android phone and you don't pay
Yeah.
for one of the additional services. But I think the trend will be towards zero,
Okay.
which is why the earlier conversation about how it all gets monetized is so
Mm.
important.
Mm. So talking about this, because I was listening to the CEO of Humane um,
Yeah,
AI. He did an interview in July. I can't remember on which podcast. I think it was a podcast in Saudi Arabia. I was looking for him, but he was on the
all in
All
podcast.
In,
Yeah,
yeah, as well.
I
Because
watched it.
you watched it, okay? Because I remember a few years ago, I watched an interview, I think, between Shamat. Papa, I can never pronounce his.
Chamath
Papa,
Palihapitiya.
yeah, there we go. And the founder and CEO of Grok with a Q. So he was one of the early investors
Yeah,
in it. And basically, and obviously, Humane in Saudi Arabia, they got the infrastructure of Grok. That's what they're doing, what they're
yeah.
doing. Um, so you mentioned, I mean, he said that I think they want to be in the top 10, and I think they're number three after the US and China in terms of data centers, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
But you mentioned in one of your shows with, I mean, one of your conversations about, you spoke about reciprocity, not rivalry, between the US and China.
Hmm.
And you mentioned Saudi Arabia is well positioned because it's friendly with America and with China.
Hmm.
So, should one choose one side, or will they be allowed to choose one side and another, or over,
Yeah,
like, should they,
yeah. Look, I think there's an attempt to frame AI as a competition between nation states. And of
Mhm.
course, at some level, there's some truth in that. The US economy is completely integrated into the world economy, but it does have separate interests, and so does China, and so does Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is the most obvious. It has to replace oil as a source of revenue before oil runs out. And therefore, it's very focused on inbound investment in revenue generating services, and data centers can certainly be one of those. But what I believe is that the framing as national competitions misses the bigger picture, which is the uplifting of the human race through the development of AI. And so, Chinese people are going to be uplifted, Saudis are going to be uplifted, you know, Ethiopians are going to be uplifted, Americans are going to be uplifted. The money from that uplift um, will think of it as money from automation, touching humans. That money will be everywhere, but mostly in the places selling. Sellers get money, buyers spend money. And there's going to be Chinese sellers, American sellers, Saudi sellers. So the reality is the gross domestic product of the world will grow, measured in things produced and consumed, and everybody will be uplifted. And if you wanted to say country A will win and country B will lose, that will be true at a relative level, between the two of them. And in that, I certainly believe China is going to win and America is going to lose, for sure. It's inevitable to me. Um, but America isn't really losing. It's going to grow. It's going to be very powerful, valuable. It has probably got the biggest AI companies, but AI, nobody predicts AI being more than 20% of global GDP. So even if America owned all of it, it's still only 20 out of 100. And so the world, by which I mean humans winning, is the bigger story here, not nations losing. And that's why I use the word reciprocity. It isn't nation to nation reciprocity, it's human to human.
Yeah, no, look, I wrote a few months ago, like just an article on, because one of the reactions I also get, like when you mention, and that was a few months ago, but it's reoccurring. It doesn't change. You mentioned DeepSeek or China. Oh no, it's China, and I'm like, and my opinion. So I'm completely with you on this. We should always have people at the center, but unfortunately, realistically, that's your optimism, I think. I don't know, but it's not. It's dominance, and I also mentioned in this that Yanis Varoufakis. I don't know if you I listen to him sometimes, and
He's the
he
Greek
mentioned, yeah,
former
yeah,
minister, yeah.
yeah, correct, yeah, that's him. He had a talk. I can send it to you after, where he said that China's winning on cloud capital, you know, and America's way behind on this. That's like his
Yeah,
interpretation,
yeah.
but yeah, I don't know if on that, because I'm with you on this. We should, but it's not the way the world works, the way I see it. Maybe because I've lived through war, I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think in order to conceptualize it, you almost have to have two parallel sets of facts. The first is what's happening to globalization and nation states. And almost everything discussed is an accurate representation of what's happening there. We basically we have deglobalization, growing nationalism, economic nationalism in particular, but also, as you can see, cultural nationalism. Some of that is, um, a healthy response to, um, this is controversial, but a healthy response to the left and identity politics, telling, for example, poor white English people that they're not important. It's kind of reasonable to expect that poor white English people won't like hearing that and will react against it. Um,
Yeah, but
uh,
you watch football. I mean, I watch sometimes football if I see, but the kneeling before every game.
yeah.
I personally don't get it, but
Well, yeah. I mean, look, the UK is probably the least racist place I can imagine. That's a good example. England goes out of its way to be welcoming, even to the extent of undermining the original host population in the picture. So you get nationalism. It's a reaction, and currently putting union flags in the streets is one of the forms that that takes. I understand that. It's a normal reaction. It probably mostly isn't racist, actually. It's just, don't tell me I'm unimportant. Don't tell
okay.
me I'm less important,
Mhm.
because I think I'm important too. Don't, remember me is more or less what people are saying. So you've got this backlash that leads to nationalism, but there's also, white supremacists who are racist, who are trying to exploit this for bad end goals. So both things exist at the same time. And in global politics, that's all driven by both trends actually are driven by globalization and deglobalization. They both parts play a role, and that's all happening. It's true. The second truth, and a totally different set of facts, is technology is making the world a smaller place. Everyone's on the internet, pretty much. Not everyone, but for the most part, it's 4 billion at least now people. Um, their currencies are becoming less relevant as borders go away, either through traditional methods like Revolut or through cryptocurrencies and stable coins. Um, Central banks are becoming less relevant. Travel is growing. So you've got two different sets of facts. Both are happening, and therefore you kind of ask yourself, what does the future look like? And I think the future is one where everyone has AI, everyone can fulfill their potential, and uh, everyone becomes a little bit more global. But national power structures will resist that, and so you will get tensions. And the human race has to then make a choice how it wants to live. And China, by the way, is the least of the problems. I mean, China does have a single party system, that's true. And it is not, in Western sense, a democracy. And Western democracies are increasingly less and less democratic as well. America and Europe, the European Commission being appointed and having override on the European Parliament is the best example of lack of democracy in Europe, where the parliamentarians don't control the Commission at all. It's the other way around.
People
And
are seeing it though now, starting to see it.
people are starting to see it. So all of these things are true. And the way you stay sane is by aspiring to a human end game, which is basically free individuals having a good life and making good choices, which requires democracy, real democracy, and choice. And that requires economic growth. And economic growth requires time and money to be the focus of attention. And the struggle of working people over centuries for a shorter working day needs to be embraced, not to result in unemployment, but to result in a shorter working day, hopefully as short as zero eventually, due to automation. Those are all things to cling on to. They sound totally utopian and idealistic today, but everything is in place for those things to come true if humans want them to become true.
Yeah, some people don't get it. I think I made a TikTok. I can't remember, and it was about that. Even about the AI hospitals in China, which are experimental but doing stuff. I mean, the hospital is the place where we need AI and automation and anything you
Yeah,
could
yeah.
think of, and people don't get it. Where are doctors gonna be like? people are just not, some people, not everyone,
Yeah.
think it goes back to belief. It's like religion in a way, right?
Yeah.
People, it's really hard to
Yep.
get rid of some.
Yeah. I just did a morning mentoring Italian startups actually here in San Francisco. There's an Italian consulate-led organization called Innovit,
Ah, yes, yes, I know. Yeah.
and the consul general here is become a friend of mine. And I met a bunch of Italian startups, and they all were doing their pitch, and my job was to coach them on how in Silicon Valley to rethink how to tell their story. Every single pitch was like an insecure person apologizing for asking for money. Because in Italy, they're taught, same as England, by the way, not different. They're taught that it's it's a privilege to have an investor, and they're almost begging, and they're very conservative in explaining what they're going to do next. They were asking for money for the next 12 months, not to change the world, but for the next 12 months. And so most of their stories were what they're going to do in the next 12 months, not what they're going to do to change the world. And the whole world is like that. Humans are taught not to reach for goals, but to be realistic and conservative. And they're taught that money being invested in ideas it requires begging, as opposed to it being the logical thing for society to do.
I-
And and, and
yeah, you're saying, yeah.
so when you try to train them to tell their story differently, like I asked all of them, how valuable will what you're building be 10 years from now? Which is the right question for a fund manager because their funds last 10 years. None of them really had an answer. And so the coaching was all about how, what is the biggest version of your idea? And what will it be in 10 years? Let's answer that question. And honestly, they were scared to go there.
It's a different mindset. In 2018, I launched the Founder Institute in Milan. My number one issue or challenge, I would say, was to convince everyone, because the cohort was kind of international, but to convince everyone, even though the mentors were Italian, to pitch in English. That's number one.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like that was my number one hurdle. But then at the end, some people were recognizing that that was actually a
Yeah.
great idea.
So they did all pitch in English.
Yeah, no,
They
obviously.
all, they all pitched in English. I have a Japanese friend, Ikuo Hirashi, who'll probably listen to this, who's at your stage that you were at then. He's at that stage in Japan. He's trying to teach Japanese entrepreneurs to pitch in English.
Okay. Yeah, that was a number one challenge. But that's, if you wanna be a startup, like that's 101.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not gonna happen.
But I will say I'm amazed by, I was in Tuscany this summer, and
Nice.
the 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 spread of English is huge now. I mean, maybe it's just Tuscany, but even in Rome, English was not a problem. Whereas when I first went to Rome, you had to try your best to speak bad Italian. Now you can do that out of respect, but immediately the person will answer in English.
Okay, you were there for work or
No,
for
no,
business?
we had a family vacation.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean Rome is full of tourists anyway. It's just they're
yeah,
used to it, I guess.
yeah,
Um, no, yeah, no, but I think for what you're saying, going back to that, the investment landscape or the investors are different and think differently. Not only in Italy, but I mean, Italy is not, the most, I would say, startup friendly, entrepreneurship friendly place.
yeah,
It's getting better for sure, but it's nowhere near
yeah.
other places in Europe.
Well, I
Um,
actually had another experience. This is with a Milan-based Italian bank last week about signal rank. And the start of the call, we said to them, well, tell us how you think about venture capital before we tell you what we do. And they basically said, oh, we've got all these terrible clients who want to put money into AI, and we have to persuade them not to because it's too risky. And so the wealth managers within the bank were considered venture capital to be too high risk. So I started my presentation saying single rank de-risks venture capital. And it was a very awkward conversation.
I
And
should make a clip out of this and share it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
You
Luckily, I
know.
didn't name the bank in question, but
Oh no, we're
but
live now.
but but they understand that their clients basically want to put money in today and get like a 10x gain next week. So there
Yeah.
is this very short-termist money seeking short-term gains,
Yeah.
which is characteristic of fear of missing out and of a bubble-like environment. So they're not wrong to recognize that. That is correct. On the other hand, venture capital as an asset class is a great asset class. So now it's about the details of how you do it. And I think they throw the baby with the bathwater.
I think yeah, that there's a question of education, and probably the bank you're mentioning, they need to understand what's happening better rather than saying no, because the brain will say no to anything new anyway.
Yeah,
So it's just an automatic
yeah.
reaction.
It depends on the brain. I mean, you know, I don't know what percentage of people are like me, but certainly at least 10%, maybe more. But from a very young age, new is good for me. Like, I didn't want English girlfriends once I became of the right age to be interested in girls. My first girlfriend was French. I had a Nigerian girlfriend. I had a Japanese girlfriend. Why? Just the very fact that they're different was interesting.
Yeah, I think it's because of the creative brain and curiosity,
Yeah,
but not everyone's comfortable with uncomfortability, if that makes sense. I
yeah,
think as a designer as well, the whole thing is to be okay with not knowing, with not knowing anything sometimes, and just jumping into it, discovering, and then doing something. But not everyone is comfortable or is okay with uncertainty and not knowing.
yeah, yeah. No, it's insecurity and fear.
Yeah.
And insecurity is probably, um, it's funny. American parents are brainwashed into understanding that confidence is one of the most important things they can give their kids. So they give their kids medals even when they don't win, things like that. And but there is a truth that confidence is important, but the confidence has to be grounded in a reason to be confident. And a fake medal isn't. So it really comes down to understanding building your own confidence through trying things and failing, and then learning and then getting better. To me, that is normal. And so removing fear is probably the biggest contribution you can give to the human race, actually.
I'm doing these. I have a nephew who's turning 3 next month. Whenever I see him, like I let him do the hard work to do what he wants to do,
Right.
because it makes a difference. And when you meet actually any American person, they're so confident compared to anywhere else in the world. Like
Yeah.
it's astonishing how good of a job. It's cultural, and
It's
great at sales.
it's very deep in the American Revolution against the English is taught, and um, that idea of freedom of the individual and independent. I think the French have that as well. The French Revolution is still very much a thing in the mind of the average French person. So that's totally different than, say, Italian reunification, which was a top-down kind of thing. And so this cultural idea that the people make a difference and are important, the British don't have it because Cromwell they had a revolution and then brought back the king and bowed down to monarchs. So the English don't have it either, but I think it's historical, where that comes from, and then you have to nurture it.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, with the French Revolution, it's a you feel the pride also when uh, people talk about it and it's mentioned.
Well,
Okay.
when it's top down, like
Mm.
Germany with Bismarck, or Italy or England, you get this hierarchy of power that you subordinate yourself to.
I like how you trace that back. Actually,
Yeah.
this is it's interesting.
Russian Revolution, you know, the average Russian is quite confident.
And I'm not in general. There's always a thin line between confidence and arrogance. That's
Yep.
and this is
Yeah. I think the Americans have a lot of that going on. But humbleness and confidence are the nicest combination.
yeah. It,
Because and not fake humbleness, but knowing your limits.
yeah, yeah. Not being too low and not too high. It's
That's
yeah.
very hard for Americans in the context of China. I have many friends who I can't really discuss China with them rationally because they start with such an absolutist view that America's the best, and
Yeah.
they're very insecure about China.
Yeah, you wanna laugh? I spent a day through an introduction with an American person, and it was just about. I mean, a well-traveled person who was just like America just saved the world on all fronts, and I was like, I
Well,
just couldn't say anything. It's like,
that's delusional. Like, the truth is America replaced Britain and Germany as the world leading industrial power due to the fact that it joined two world wars at the end after the others were bankrupt or defeated. And so it won by not playing. Whereas the popular opinion here is it sent the troops, and that's the only reason the
yes,
European wars ended the way they did.
they called for help. That
Yeah,
was the
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
and I had to listen to that. And
Yeah,
I was like, oh, where can I like bury myself? So
exactly.
so we went a bit into critical thinking, and so I want to go back a little bit into AI. I mean, that's fascinating. I think I could spend a whole day discussing, but I know you have a day off to work actually,
I
not to
do.
talk to me. So um, if if AI, because you mentioned learning, right? Talking about learning and education and so on. You were giving an example just right now about a kid, taking a screenshot of like a question and trying to get AI to help him think,
Yeah.
not have the answer. But that's tough because AI so far by default just gives you answers instantly. Um, so how do we preserve the struggle that creates learning?
Well, I think you're going to have the whole spectrum.
Mm.
Um, some kids will take a picture of a question, get the answer, and give the answer to the teacher. The teacher's job is to teach the kid how to use AI better than that, how to use AI to help him or her understand whatever the thing is. And so uh, an AI produced answer, uh, for most purposes, should be scored low by the adjudicator. But a kid who uses AI to really understand, let's say they're reading a book in English literature, to understand the context of the book, the author, the meaning of the plot, and so on, and is prompting AI not for an answer to a question, but prompting AI to help the kid think. That's a good thing. And so AI is a tool for thinking. is should be the goal. Now, what does that mean? I think what it means is the role of the teacher changes. In US classes, the teacher's job is to present the curriculum to the kids, sometimes factual, sometimes not factual, depending on the class. And then to give the kids tests, and then to score the tests. So the teacher does three things: gives the curriculum, tests, scores. Very little time for talking to the kids one-on-one, or even knowing them very well. Now, if the AI can give you the curriculum, which it can, if it can give you tests, which it can, and if it can score the tests, which it can, then the teacher's job can be way more human, which is to engage with the kids and teach them. Critical thinking was a phrase you just used. That is the job of education, to give kids, an understanding of systems and the ability to think critically. So math, physics, chemistry, biology, it's all systems. English literature, it isn't. Statistics, it is, and so on. So I think AI can replace teaching and scoring, but it can't replace development, human development. And so I think schools can massively benefit from AI if they embrace it and rediscover their purpose, which is to build human beings.
Yeah. So, um, if AI can enhance human thinking, what parts of human thinking, just going back to what you were saying, right, should we protect from being, I wouldn't say, maybe outsourced is the word?
I think I'm extreme on that. I don't think we should protect anything.
Okay.
I mean, in a way, what are you protecting? If let's say I'm building nuclear power stations, these new small reactors that can power whole cities, and they're safe, and I'm hiring, and there's 5 people coming for the job, and only one of them has the skills. Should I hire the others to protect them from the clever one? No. You hire the best for the outcome. Now, that doesn't mean you discard the other 4. You just don't give them that specific job because they're not right for it. And so if AI can be, be as good, and remember, AI is human. Sometimes people, when they talk about this, they imagine this AI is just technology, but it's created by humans with code. It's a tool like a hammer, created by humans. A hammer can't do anything on its own, neither can AI. It has to be told what to do. And so if AI can be told to do something better than a human can, and it can achieve that, let's allow it to do that. Now let's take these humans to do things AI can't do. For example, I think AI ultimately is going to be able to do any specialism. Any specialism you can imagine. It's probably the case that AI will be as good as the best human at doing it. Not better, because it's using human materials to learn on, but it will be at least as good as the best human. Well, that means humans have to do things that are not those specialisms. They either have to develop new specialisms that don't exist yet, or become really good generalists. Like a human can say, we want to build a new bridge in Milan between this district and that district, because by doing that, the city planning will change in this way. That's imagination. And it's being a generalist. It's actually going up and seeing the big picture. Well, now it might take 1,000 specialists to build that bridge. AI can do that specialist stuff. It's never going to decide to build the bridge. And so I think humans end up being capable of abstract thought, planning, general direction, accelerated general direction, where more things are possible, and hopefully the working day will shrink for everyone, and we'll have better things from less people with AI doing what it's good at. And I don't know how humans suffer from that. There is this kind of wrong impression that human brains are going to turn into, mashed potato, um, because of not being used. I think the brain gets used more. Every day my brain's being used more than it used to be before AI, because I have to think about what to get the AI to do.
Yeah, yeah. You just use it differently. It's
Yeah.
not that you're not using. So where do you see, you triggered me to ask you about the universal basic income coming into this?
Well, before you can have that, you have to have universal wealth.
Mm. Do you
So,
think that would happen?
well, before you have universal wealth, you have to have wealth.
Also
So,
that one.
so what is wealth? Wealth really is the abundance of things. It's measured in things, clothes, vehicles, travel. Wealth is measured in things.
But
So,
distribution.
well, let's come to that second, because you can't have
Mm.
if you go to distribution first before there's wealth,
Oh
you
no,
end up
yeah.
you end up with Stalinism.
Yeah, yeah, no,
You know,
no.
you know, how do you divide a small pie? You steal most of it.
Yeah.
You know, so in order for there to be universal wealth, there has to be a big pie, and the big pie comes from automation and is measured in things. If that happens, the price of everything tends towards zero, because automation doesn't cost as much as human labor. And so the step one, wealth, mostly that's going to be concentrated initially. Step two, universal wealth. Well, that requires policy. Should the proceeds of automation be taxed at 99%? Why not? No one loses because it's automation. So you need some kind of policy that decides that automated wealth is not privately owned. And tax is the obvious place to do that without needing revolutions. Governments that really are for the people, by the people, of the people, would say this is the people's wealth, because it comes from human progress over all centuries. And then you find a mechanism for leveraging that wealth. Now, my guess is that prices tend towards zero. So you won't need money to buy food or pay rent. I'm now talking way in the future. And there'll be a process towards that from today, which starts with taxation. You know, could I think he wouldn't want to, but could Elon Musk and Sam Altman resist that? No, they're two people. You know, if the world's population voted for that, it would happen.
Yeah, I think you're the most optimistic person I've ever met as well.
Well,
But I like your I like how you're connecting them though. But I mean, you're talking that's in a long time. I mean, we'll have to see how things
well,
unfold, how
look at
decisions are made.
look at Mandami in New York.
Yeah,
Mandami says we're gonna make travel free.
yeah,
He probably can do that. All it takes is someone to want to.
yeah,
And so if now at the same time, you don't want a confiscation society. You don't want to stop capitalism producing wealth, because that's where it comes from.
yeah.
So you've got to uh, time abundance and distribution at the right pace. to benefit everyone. But that's
Yeah.
doable. You just have to want to do it. By the way, I'm not making predictions here, so I'm not necessarily an optimist. I'm saying what my preferred future would be.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it will happen because there's many things that can go wrong.
Yeah.
Humans make bad decisions all the time.
Do you see an AI government? I mean, you saw in
No,
Albania they had this AI minister for whatever.
yeah, no, no. I think, I think human decision making is always going to be core.
Mm.
But I think you can have AI administration, where
Hmm.
government stops being power politics and becomes administration of the people's needs.
Hmm.
And AI can be administrators, but it can't be setting direction or goals or, replacing voting.
Yeah. Okay. I have like 5 questions, quick ones.
All
You
right.
up for it? Okay. The first one is Adeoresi. I saw he made a post, actually a poll and then a post, asking if you would give equity to your AI co-founder, like not as a human into
Yeah,
AI, but
yeah,
AI
yes,
co-founder.
yes.
What's your take on that?
No,
Okay.
no,
Yeah.
I think you've got to be very strict on AI as a tool. It's not a person.
No, it's not. And I think people who responded, my comment was, I think people understood it wrong
Yeah.
because, another one, if you want to answer that one, name one company everyone thinks will win that you think will fail.
Interesting. Meta.
Okay. Meta on the AI front, all over.
I think eventually all over.
Hmm.
It's already failing on AI.
Oh,
The
with
new
all their investments. Okay.
Well, the hires they made
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Jan LeCun leaving
Yes.
are all Mark Zuckerberg playing with people, going down another wrong path.
Okay. So you've been doing this for 40 years, more or less. What's the one thing about tech that never changes?
Making today becomes irrelevant tomorrow.
Okay, I like that one. Okay. If you had to bet your net worth on one thing, I think AI continues exponentially or AI hits a wall. Which side? I think I know your answer, but
I think LLMs are limited.
okay.
They're word guessing machines, but they're very good. Good but limited. So I don't expect LLMs to produce artificial general intelligence, meaning creative insight and innovation. I do think DeepMind at Google,
Mm-hmm.
using machine learning, deep learning models, and reinforcement learning can in very specific specialisms. And that is a more likely future for innovation. But LLMs will be really, really good for what they're good for. And in that sense, if I was betting my net worth, it would be on deep mind like specific innovations.
Okay. What would 1994, I think it was Keith, the one who started EasyNet,
Yeah.
think of 2025 Keith running Signal Rank?
Uh, I think the 1994 version would hate me because I'm too linear now. I'm not as crazy.
Okay. Yeah, but are you? That's the thing. Or it's because of your gut and intuition and everything you've learned.
I I I, I could have been accused of arrogance and hubris in 1994. Today, I think I'm a bit more self-aware.
Okay. And you told me in 2023 you can't sell things you don't believe in. Um, I'm quoting you. I'm one of those people that unless I believe in something, I can't do it. I can't sell stuff I know is not right. I can only really get passionate when I know something is right or works.
Mhm.
So, what's something everyone in tech is selling right now that you absolutely don't believe in?
Search engine optimization.
Okay.
Um, there are people trying to bring that approach into AI,
Yes,
which,
that's
and
correct.
they've been funded. I don't believe in that.
Okay.
Advertising as the display advertising, I should be specific,
Uh-huh.
as the and video advertising, I think go away ultimately. Um, Lots of things actually.
Okay. And last one, you said in 2023, the decisions, that's what you said, the decisions I made in my life were all motivated by the same instinct. And the instinct is to escape irrelevance. What are you escaping now?
Hmm. Retirement, possibly. Yeah, no, I'm escaping. You talked earlier about optimism. I think there's a deep insecurity that lives alongside a desire to make change. And what presents as optimism is really at the same time fear. And they live together. And so your happiness derives from not giving into the fear.
Okay, nice. Cool. I'll let you be. Is there anything you would like to add yourself?
Um, I don't think so. Viva AC Milan.
Okay, here we go. Not whatever. Let's
Are
go
you?
AC Milan.
Do you care about AC Milan or Inter?
No, I don't. But I just got an AC Milan jersey for my nephew, so not sure that counts.
There you go.
No, thank you so much, Keith.
My
And
son's girlfriend, by the way, Sophie. Her dad is Italian, her mum is French.
okay.
I think they speak Italian at home because she's from the part of France which borders Italy,
Uh-huh.
wherever that is. Um, she's just graduated as a design graduate from Syracuse University.
Hmm.
She's looking for internships, if anything, and she's from Milan.
Yeah. I'll
Uh,
stop the recording in the
yeah,
meantime.
yeah. Well, you can